In my past life, I endured 8 years of living as a widow in all but name. Only on my deathbed did I realize my husband had remained chaste for the sake of my best friend. He had told me it was because he lost his fertility while saving my life, yet in no time he brought their 2-year-old son to my side. "This child has struck a chord with me, let's adopt him," they said. He used my family's resources and funds to start his own company. The first thing the company did after going public was to send me a room full of fresh lilies with pistils intact. I died from pollen-induced allergic asthma. If I could do it all over again, I'd proudly champion his ship with his bestie Valerie. Anyone who dares to stop me will get bitten. At the company's new project meeting, the young assistant nudged my arm and whispered, "Ravenna, does Ronan have some issue with you? When you were speaking earlier, he was staring straight at you with a really intimidating look." Following her slightly puzzled gaze, I looked over and was startled to see Ronan seated at the far end of the conference table. "He looks like such a nice guy, but his eyes seem like they could swallow someone whole," the assistant muttered under her breath beside me. As soon as Ronan across from me noticed me looking at him, he instantly changed his expression, shifting seamlessly from blatant disgust to one of tender affection. The project leader was still analyzing the details of the plan, while the white ceiling light above, as bright as daylight, made my eyes ache. I pinched my thigh hard. The sharp pain jolted me awake instantly, and I glanced at the date on my phone again. I froze. This was the year Ronan and I were preparing to get married. Had I been reborn? I remembered that in this same year in my past life, I was inexplicably kidnapped by a group of people. They weren't after money or my body, they simply locked me on the 3rd floor of an abandoned building for one night. At the time, I thought it was a business rival of my mother's, someone who resented us for taking their business, so they kidnapped me for revenge. I begged them tearfully to let me go, promising I could give them a lot of money if they just spared me. Just as the lead kidnapper was wavering, Ronan suddenly appeared. At that moment, he transformed into righteousness, pointing at the 3 kidnappers and unleashing a torrent of words, calling them cowards who only dared to intimidate women. He challenged them to release me and take everything out on him if they had any guts. As a result, the kidnappers released me just as he had hoped, surrounding him and beating him mercilessly. He was hospitalized for over a month. At that time, I already had feelings for him, and after this incident, I felt both gratitude and guilt toward him. So when he proposed to me, I agreed without hesitation. Little did I know, this marked the beginning of my nightmare. After marriage, he confessed to me that when he saved me, the kidnappers had kicked and injured him, leaving him unable to father children. He said if I minded, he could divorce me immediately. Since he was injured for my sake and we were already married, I told him not to feel pressured. As long as there was hope for recovery, I would accompany him to the hospital for treatment as long as necessary. The irony was, in public, he put on a flawless performance of being deeply devoted and unwavering in his love for me, but behind closed doors, he wouldn't even hold my hand. I discovered Ronan's secret and was murdered by his scheme. That day marked the listing of Ronan's company, and he hadn't returned home in over half a month, buried in work. While organizing his study at home, I came across a stack of files in the drawer. The top documents were the adoption procedures for our son, but beneath them was the child's birth certificate. The mother's name clearly stated, Valerie. Valerie was my best friend, my childhood confidant. My scalp tingled with shock, but I couldn't believe this Valerie was actually my close friend. Perhaps it was just someone with the same name. I started searching through the documents in his desk, but found nothing. Finally, I happened to look up and noticed a small safe placed on the highest shelf of the cabinet. I climbed onto a stool, entered the child's birthday from the birth certificate, and the safe opened. Inside, apart from some gold bars and jewelry, there were only photos. Photos of him and my best friend Valerie, or portraits of the 3 of them as a family. Judging from some of the older photos, their relationship even predated our marriage. One photo, showing Valerie in a wedding dress, had "beloved of this life, inseparable in life and death" written on the back, in Ronan's handwriting. My mind went completely blank, unable to think, and my whole body trembled. It took almost all my strength just to crawl down from the chair. One was my husband of 8 years, the other my best friend whom I'd known for over 2 decades. How laughable, how pitiful. Yet before I could even confront this wretched pair, the next morning I discovered the entire house filled with fresh lilies whose stamens hadn't been removed. I suffer from allergic asthma, triggered by pollen. Even a single bunch of lilies with stamens could be fatal to me, let alone a whole house full of them. Gasping for breath and coughing, I frantically rummaged through my bag for the asthma inhaler, only to find it empty when I tried to use it. In despair, I slid down the wall onto the floor. From respiratory arrest to respiratory failure, it took just 15 short minutes. In my final moments, I didn't notice when Ronan returned. He stood over me, looking down with scarlet eyes full of disdain. I wanted to ask him why he treated me this way, but by then, I could no longer make a sound. He seemed to read my thoughts and let out a scornful laugh. Originally you could have lived a few more days, but you just had to go into my study and read things you shouldn't have seen. Do you know, Valerie is your sister, she's also your father's daughter. Now you can step aside. Keeping you by my side for 8 years was already more than enough kindness. Now, your mother's company is practically bankrupt and under liquidation under my control. You can all happily reunite down there. As he spoke, he took a step forward, stepping on the back of my hand and grinding it down hard twice. But I barely felt any pain due to respiratory failure. These 10 years with you have been so suffocating I'm about to go mad. You treated me like a dog just because your family has some filthy money, and your condescending mother disgusts me the most. Now let her, with her white hair, bury you, her black-haired child. Let's see how long that old woman, who's been drugged by your father for over a year, can still struggle. Gradually, I could no longer make out his words as my consciousness blurred. All I could hear was his near-hysterical laughter. For 8 years, I worked hard for him, pouring almost all my resources into supporting his business ventures and paving his way in the commercial world. To prevent business associates from saying he rose to success by relying on a woman, I willingly stepped back into domestic life once his company stabilized, devoting myself to raising our adopted son. And this son actually turned out to be his child with another woman. Everything I did only resulted in him scheming to kill me and bankrupt my mother's company. How I despise him. Ravenna, what are you thinking about? Ronan's deliberately softened voice sounded by my ear. I didn't notice when the meeting had ended, leaving only Ronan and me in the vast conference room. As I looked at the handsome yet cunning man before me, a suffocating wave of hatred washed over me like a tidal wave. I couldn't wait to exact my revenge on him right then and there. But, it was far too easy for him. In this second life, I'm going to alter the original storyline. I refuse to have any connection with him again. Neither he nor Valerie will ever get the chance to leech off me anymore. And my scumbag dad, I'll help my mom kick him out too. In his previous life, Ronan cared most about his pride, reveling in the feeling of being superior. Then, he won't get any of that anymore. The only thing I can grant him is to let him stay with my best friend, Valerie, forever. I smoothed the stray hair by my ear and replied lightly, I've thought about it, we should call off the engagement. Ronan, who had been putting on a show of tenderness, instantly changed his expression. Ravenna, what are you saying? Didn't we agree that you'd go home next Monday to secretly take your household register for marriage? And then we'd confess our marriage to your mom after getting the certificate? The abacus beads almost hit me in the face. In my previous life, my mother disapproved of our marriage, but with his encouragement and my father's cooperation, I successfully got the household registration book and married him. My mom doesn't approve of us. I would never marry a man she doesn't accept. Ravenna, are you afraid I'll betray you in the future? I swear to you, I'll love only you for the rest of my life and treat you well forever. Isn't your mother's wish just to find a man who treats you well? Though impatient, he deliberately lowered his voice, afraid that his colleagues outside might hear about our relationship. At work, he always pretended we were just ordinary colleagues, building an image of himself as a capable and shrewd elite man, fearing others might say he was living off my success. To showcase his competence in front of everyone, He would deliberately oppose my decisions or provide what he believed to be better suggestions during meetings. As a result, he had quite a few followers at the company, and through his subtle hints, many even believed that as a manager, I was inferior to him, the head of the marketing department. Some colleagues even bluntly remarked that without him as my right-hand man, I might not have achieved any results at all. He gazed at me with hopeful eyes, eagerly awaiting my affirmative answer. I lifted my left hand and glanced at the engagement ring on my middle finger, its tiny diamond barely a carat, and let out a derisive scoff. My grandfather was the founder of Blackwood Group in City A, my mother serves as the CEO of the corporation, and my cousin currently holds the position of marketing director at the company. I was actually planning to marry a man who could only afford a measly 1-carat diamond for an engagement ring. With my right hand, I gripped the band, twisted it lightly to remove it, cast a disdainful glance at it while toying with it, and then promptly tossed it into the trash right in front of Ronan. I was just playing with you before, didn't expect you to take it seriously. Ronan's breathing instantly became heavy, his brows furrowed so tightly they could crush a few flies. He glared resentfully at the nearly diamondless engagement ring I had thrown in the trash, his fists involuntarily clenching. I nodded at him with a smile, then walked out of the meeting room. At the bathroom mirror, I smoothed down my hair, my reflection radiates youth, with plump collagen filling my face. I love how I look now, still unblemished by the wear of trivialities, my edges not yet worn smooth. My eyes haven't taken on the bitterness of a resentful woman. This world holds too much to do, why obsess over romance? I returned to the office area to check on the marketing team's progress. What's wrong? You seemed pretty absent-minded just now. A colleague I've always gotten along well with, Claire, came over to check on me and handed me a bottle of yogurt, the kind I usually love to drink. I was just about to thank her when a slightly mocking voice sounded from behind me. You sure know how to kiss up. Our manager wanders around in a daze all day, who knows how she even got that position. One might think she has some shady relationship with the marketing director. What a joke. What other relationship could there be? A sibling one, of course. Most people at the company don't know who I really am. Everyone just thought I was the marketing manager who landed the job through connections due to my study abroad background, and that my relationship with the marketing director wasn't simple. Privately, they'd even call me a nepotism hire. Claire frowned tightly upon hearing this and turned to retort, but I patted the back of her hand, signaling her not to dwell on it. Glancing back, I realized it was Jackson, Ronan's right-hand man in my previous life and a crucial aide in founding Ronan's company. He had helped Ronan carry out countless underhanded dealings. In my past life, colleagues would gossip behind my back, and it wasn't until later that I found out it was all rumors spread by Jackson. Even when I went out for a meal with my uncle, he twisted it into me dating an elderly man. I glanced at Jackson indifferently and said, "Do rumors just roll off your tongue so easily? Instead of wasting time like this, why not focus on your performance? You've already failed 2 assessments in a row. According to company policy, I could suggest HR terminate you. We don't keep slackers here." He seemed to think I was joking, choking on his water as he replied, "You don't actually believe that just because you got some gilded diploma abroad and waltzed into our company as an outsider, people automatically respect you, do you? Talking about not keeping slackers, aren't you the real slacker here?" After speaking, he scanned the room as if seeking their agreement. Sure enough, many of them stifled giggles behind their hands, clearly enjoying the spectacle. He thought I was joking because the company had never fired anyone solely for failing performance reviews before. Typically, they would conduct a comprehensive evaluation and give employees another chance. I smiled indifferently and immediately called the HR manager in front of everyone. "Uncle Stephen, I want to fire someone named Jackson. Please handle the termination process for me." The people around burst into laughter, as if they thought I was performing some comedic act. But 1 minute later, the landline on Jackson's desk rang. He glanced at the extension number on the phone, looked at me in disbelief, and answered the call. Then his expression grew darker by the second. After hanging up, he quickly headed towards the HR department. 3 days later, Jackson was dismissed from the company. I felt thoroughly satisfied. It was also a way to cut off one of Ronan's important henchmen. I was in a great mood and wanted to grab some snacks from the break room, but Ronan blocked me in the hallway. He tried to keep his voice low, but practically roared at me. "What are you playing at? Settling personal scores on company time? Do you even know Jackson is a key member of my team? He's helping me close a major project, and HR just fired him without a handoff. Do you have any idea how much this costs me?" Funny you should ask, of course I know. I also know that project would have earned him an annual salary breaking $1 million and promoted him straight to my position as marketing manager. In my previous life, I voluntarily transferred to the research team just to vacate the spot for him. Clearly, he was at his breaking point, eyes bulging with fury, flecks of spit flying onto my face as he spoke. "Don't worry, I've already assigned Claire to handle this project. You can take a break now." "Ravenna, what exactly do you mean?" He was angered by my dismissive attitude, raising his voice a notch when he spoke again. "The meaning is clear, I'm targeting you." I enunciated each word, full of provocation. "You." Ronan was momentarily speechless with anger. His face turned alternately pale and ashen. When he finally regained his composure, he grabbed my arm tightly. "Don't forget who saved you. Don't be ungrateful. For you, I even." I glanced him up and down and let out a scornful laugh. "Even what? Even became impotent?" As if his disguise had been exposed, his face instantly twisted with humiliation and resentment, the veins on his tightly clenched hand bulging prominently. "Don't come bothering me again. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to investigate those kidnappers. Hiring someone to commit kidnapping still carries legal consequences." The kidnapping incident had been over for several months, and I had no solid evidence. I hadn't even seen the faces of those people clearly, so finding them was out of the question. Bringing it up now was just an attempt to test his reaction. But upon hearing this, Ronan immediately shut his mouth and straightened up with a guilty look on his face, saying, "I don't understand what you're talking about." His feeble attempt at cover-up only deepened my suspicion about his ties with the kidnappers. I sneered, unwilling to argue with him any further. Reluctantly and resentfully, he returned to his workstation. Then my phone was bombarded with countless accusatory messages. Feeling irritated, I immediately blocked him. Couldn't even hold out from the start? The real drama hasn't even begun yet. In the afternoon, at the private detective agency, I slapped 50,000 on the private investigator's desk and asked him to thoroughly dig into everything about Valerie, not just what I already knew from my past life, but also whatever hidden details he could uncover. I remembered adopting that boy from the orphanage in my past life. Ronan said he felt an instant connection, as if the child were his own, calling it fate. How ridiculous, of course a father would bond with his own son. In my past life, I could never figure out why the son I doted on refused to get close to me, even outright disliked me, while being especially affectionate with my best friend. No matter how I coaxed him to do his homework, it was useless, but with just a casual remark from Valerie, my son would immediately obediently sit at the desk. What he often said was, "You're the bad woman. I wish Aunt Valerie were my mom instead." Turns out the whole family had been playing me for a fool, coveting our family's assets while making me raise their son for them. Now I'm going to see how my dear best friend orchestrated this whole scheme. The private investigator really was professional. Within less than 2 days, they sent a compressed file to my email. Inside were documents, images, and even organized videos, all neatly categorized by timeline. Just reading this content makes me utterly nauseous. Though I already knew Valerie was my father's illegitimate child, seeing these truths still churns my stomach to the point of vomiting. Originally, Valerie's mother was a bartender who hooked up with my dad while my mom was pregnant and went on to bear Valerie for him. But as we all know, men are often unreliable. My father only fancied her for a few years. As my mom took control of the Blackwood Group, afraid she'd uncover his dirty little secrets and kick him out, he gave Valerie's mother a sum of money and cut off all contact. How could Valerie's mother possibly give up? After squandering that money, she brought her daughter to our city and settled near our neighborhood. She willingly became my father's underground mistress, swearing she wouldn't disrupt his family. On the surface, under my father's arrangements, Valerie became close friends with me, but in reality, the two of them were secretly working together to siphon off our family's assets. My father dealt with my mother, while she and Ronan targeted me. The more I read, the more horrified I became, cold sweat breaking out in layers on my palms. While I was still going through these documents, my phone rang. It was a call from the private detective. Ravenna, there's a very interesting discovery. It's highly possible that Valerie isn't actually your father's biological child because we just found her mother's legitimate boyfriend at the time. Check your phone, I've sent you a photo. I opened the photo. It was presumably an image of Valerie's mother and her boyfriend. Damn. Valerie looks at least 80% like that guy, especially those upturned eyes and big nose, practically identical. Might as well skip the paternity test. Suddenly, I recalled the last words Ronan spoke to me before my death in my previous life. My father would not hesitate to use me as a stepping stone for Valerie, even going so far as to drug my mother and strip her of power. So what happened to my mother afterward? After my death, my mom would surely be devastated by the loss, especially since she's been taking the medication my dad arranged for over a year. At this thought, my heart ached bitterly. I forwarded this ridiculous content to my mom, fully convinced that my dad would be left with nothing but his underwear. But little did I expect that the very evidence meant to leave my dad penniless in the divorce would end up cementing the marriage between Valerie and my dad. But that's a story for later. Suddenly, I wanted to visit the apartment I had lent to Valerie. Doing the math, her son should have been born by now. Valerie had been staying in one of my apartments in the southern suburbs. In my past life, she had always pleaded poverty, and since I truly didn't need that particular property, she never moved out, not even after I died. I drove directly to the neighborhood where the apartment was located, then went to the property management to register the owner's ID and obtain the spare key to the apartment. Although I was mentally prepared, the moment I opened the door, I was still shocked. Ronan was sitting on the sofa wearing light gray homeware, holding a 2 or 3 month old baby in his arms. Valerie, holding a breast pump, had just sat down on a chair and was about to lift her shirt. On the cabinet below the TV sat a family photo of the three of them. The foul smell in the room made my head spin. The noise at the door made both of them look up at me simultaneously. Once they saw clearly who it was, their expressions changed drastically, and the breast pump in Valerie's hand fell to the ground. Ravenna, what brings you here? She couldn't suppress her panic, her voice trembling slightly. Ronan gently placed the baby in his arms onto the nearby rocking crib and stood up, looking at me in confusion while nervously rubbing his palms against his pants. Guiltily avoiding my gaze, he muttered to the floor, your friend's baby suddenly fell ill, and she panicked and called me. Since it was for you, I came to check. Ravenna, don't overthink it. Valerie quickly nodded in agreement. Listening to this absurd explanation, I laughed until my stomach hurt. I reminded him, Ronan, did you forget? According to the script you've been acting out, the two of you haven't even met yet. I never introduced Valerie to you. What, have you gotten confused from too many scripts? Ronan's face turned pale, then flushed, and he stammered for a long time without uttering a single word. I turned to Valerie, whose face was just as pale. Her eyes were red, delicate and fragile, like a pitiful white lotus that had been wronged. Ravenna, listen to me, it's not what you think. Fine, then explain it to me properly, what exactly is going on? I leisurely crossed my arms and watched her with amusement. I gave her a chance, but instead of speaking, she just stammered, fidgeting with her fingers, her face full of embarrassment. I didn't have time to watch her continue this act. Get out of my house as soon as possible. If I still find anything left here in a couple of days, then sorry, but it'll all end up in the dumpster. Ronan stepped in front of me, trying to stop me, but his mouth hung half open, unable to utter a word. Get out too, don't try to be clever in front of me. Right now, you're no better than trash in my eyes. I yelled at Ronan. With that, I slammed the door and left. Behind me came Ronan's urgent cries of Valerie. I guessed he must have fallen or fainted. Early the next morning, Valerie showed up at my house looking disheveled. My father happened to be there, and a fleeting panic crossed his face when he saw her barging in. "Valerie, what brings you here?" Dad, seeing me come out of the room, she quickly corrected herself. "Uncle, I came looking for Ravenna." She suddenly took back the apartment she lent me and asked me to move out. "I can't find a place to stay at such short notice, so I was hoping to beg her for a bit more time." She put on a pitiful look and stared at my father. Upon hearing this, my dad immediately grew furious and demanded of me, "Are you that desperate for the money from one apartment? Valerie was living there just fine, how could you decide to sell it off so abruptly?" Watching my father's face flush red with anger, I couldn't help but wonder what expression he'd have if he knew this daughter wasn't his own. The thought alone amused me, and I couldn't suppress a smile. "Answer me. How can you be so cold-hearted toward a friend at such a young age? That apartment is only worth a few million, what's the harm in letting Valerie live there? If you need money, just go whine to your grandpa or ask your mom for it. Shame on you, you two grew up as best friends." My father's face had turned the color of liver in anger. "Dad, if outsiders didn't know better, seeing you defend her like this, they'd think she was your secret illegitimate child," I said with a mischievous grin. Valerie trembled upon hearing this, her eyes filled with panic. "You ungrateful wretch, how dare you speak to your father like that?" My father reached out to slap me. Just then, my mother, who naturally had the aura of a leading lady, appeared. She was wearing a silk nightgown, looking lazy yet sophisticated. She scolded my father and then threw a stack of documents in his face. I glanced at them, the words "divorce agreement" were clearly visible, and another paper fluttering to the floor was a paternity test report. My father picked up the paternity test first, glaring at me fiercely. However, after seeing the conclusion stamped in red, his gaze shifted from me to Valerie. He seemed disbelieving, flipping through the report several times. Then he stared intently at Valerie's face, as if searching for confirmation in her expression. Finally, he let out a furious roar and punched Valerie in the face. Haha, he must have discovered that this woman isn't his biological daughter. Valerie fell backward onto the floor with nothing to cushion her fall. She picked up the report my father had thrown on the ground, glanced at it, and froze on the spot. My father dropped to his knees at my mother's feet, slapping his own face as he begged for her forgiveness. My mother gestured to the butler standing in the middle of the living room, instructing him to throw out all of my father's belongings. My father tried to stop the butler from tossing his things while simultaneously reaching for my mother's hand. She kicked him square in the chest, sending him sprawling onto the floor. My mother patted the spot where my father had touched her and said, "You deal with the rest." Without looking back, she went into the bedroom and closed the door. Truly my mother, a decisive woman in business, no exception when it comes to relationships. My father scrambled on his knees to knock on the bedroom door, pleading tearfully for my mother to open it. Valerie finally snapped out of her earlier shock. She slowly rose to her feet, met my eyes with a level gaze, and smirked disdainfully. Apparently realizing that the truth was out and there was no way to hide it, she simply tore off the mask. "Ravenna, you're not entirely stupid after all. After playing you for so many years, it's not too bad that you finally caught on." She finally tore off her disguise, baring her fangs like a predator, which was actually somewhat thrilling. I waited for her to unleash her ultimate move without responding. "Didn't you love Ronan to death? Well, guess what? He loves me. A mere flick of my finger, and he'd dump you in a heartbeat." I frowned. Was this her so-called magic attack? Just this? Seeing my stern expression, she thought she had gotten to me and grew even more smug. "Ravenna, since elementary school, I've had you wrapped around my finger, and now is no different. If you kneel and beg me, I might let you have Ronan, but whether he'd choose you, I can't guarantee." All she ever talked about was Ronan. I thought she had some extraordinary tricks up her sleeve. I grew impatient and urged her, "Say it all at once, so what happened next?" Valerie's expression froze. She probably didn't understand what I was trying to get her to say. Oh. I get it now. Her trump card was Ronan. What a ridiculous bluff. Then I'll think about it, I said with a grave look. Since she assumed I couldn't live without Ronan, I didn't mind letting her grow even more arrogant. Seeing my expression, Valerie thought she had me under control. She snorted lightly through her nose, then glanced at my father, who was still sobbing on the ground, and spat dismissively. All idiots, the whole lot of you. She then gave me another sidelong glance and said, well, I won't be moving out of the house just yet. With that, she swayed her hips and left. I stepped on the paternity test report with my foot and smirked. Fine, if you won't move out, then I'll just have to sue you for trespassing. Ronan hasn't been doing too well lately. I've been cold to him all the time, and his colleagues at the company have started looking at him with strange gazes. With several of his confidants already dismissed, his position in the company became increasingly untenable. I also deliberately began distancing resources from him, simultaneously promoting Claire to be the head of the marketing department, sharing equal authority with him. Claire's abilities were no less than Ronan's, in fact, she was even more capable. A graduate of a top-tier university, she had single-handedly shouldered the marketing department's responsibilities in my previous life after Ronan and I left. The reason I hadn't severed all ties with Ronan yet was to play a longer game and reel in a bigger catch. His professional setbacks made him even more insecure. Especially after I assigned the last major project to Claire instead of him, his resentment toward me only deepened. He secretly contacted Jackson, who had already been dismissed, and wanted to start his own business again. Coincidentally, they ventured into the same new energy company as in their previous life. He began paving his own path, secretly reaching out to several of Blackwood Group's cooperative clients, attempting to glean information from the responsible parties about potential future collaboration. This is actually a major taboo in the industry. In the previous life, no one made an issue of it because Blackwood Group tacitly allowed his actions and didn't pursue the matter. But now things are different. These clients are companies that have collaborated with Blackwood Group for years, some even for over 2 decades. Soon, the matter reached the ears of the top executives. However, I begged my cousin to temporarily keep this matter under wraps, waiting to settle all accounts together after autumn. During this time, Ronan seemed to have completely changed his attitude toward me. He no longer cared whether people in the company would suspect him of being a freeloader. Openly, he showered me with affectionate attention, bringing me breakfast, delivering fruit, or even personally queuing up to buy afternoon tea for me. These were luxuries I never experienced in my past life. Every day, he lavished me with sweet words and gestures, while I responded with indifference. Meanwhile, I quietly removed his authority and resources, all while instructing the company's integrity department to scrutinize his expense reports, income, and financial transactions. When I saw the investigation results, I was shocked once more. His audacity knew no bounds. Taking advantage of our relationship, he had secretly embezzled an untold amount of company funds and gifts. Indeed, he has always positioned himself as the company's prospective son-in-law, so accepting these gifts probably felt no different than taking from his own family. It seems he and my dear younger sister will reunite in prison, though they took different paths, they've arrived at the same destination. After sending me breakfast for a month, Ronan finally asked if I could lend him $30 million for a startup. What? Were those breakfasts gold-plated, worth $30 million a month? I gave him a "Are you out of your mind?" look before lowering my head to focus on my own work. Ravenna, I know you've been upset with me because of your friend's situation, but I swear to heaven, there's absolutely nothing between us. I love only you. I bought you a new diamond ring. If you were unsatisfied with our last engagement, let's do it again properly. Don't be jealous anymore. I've noticed your little tantrums these past days, and I promise you, from now on, I'll be completely devoted to you. I put down what I was doing and looked at his solemn face, feeling utterly speechless. Seriously? Did he really think all I've been doing lately was acting out of jealousy and revenge? Fine. Then first resign from your position at the conglomerate, assemble a team, and start as soon as possible. Really, Ravenna? I've already made all the preparations. Why don't you talk to your grandfather about using that office building of his in the southern suburbs? After all, we're family, I'm sure he'll support your career. That familiar glint of shrewd calculation reappeared in Ronan's eyes. Though he had started his business 3 years earlier than in my previous life, his intentions were exactly the same. With a smile, I nodded and made a call right in front of him. 2 minutes later, I said apologetically, "What bad timing. The entire building has already been leased out to someone else. It seems you won't be able to use it after all." Disappointment flashed across his face. Reading his mind, I offered a suggestion: that company probably won't last much longer. I heard they're about to file for bankruptcy liquidation. Why don't you rent another office space for now, and you can move in once this one becomes available? Ronan's eyes darted around, clearly calculating gains and losses. In truth, his startup didn't need much space at this stage, just a dozen or so people at most, far from requiring an entire building. His desire for his grandfather's building was purely to bolster his image, a matter of prestige. Doesn't grandfather have any other buildings? Blackwood Group is such a massive conglomerate, it can't possibly have just one office building. After mulling it over, he still couldn't let go and finally spoke up. I'm not sure about that. Why don't you call and ask yourself? I slid the phone toward him. He hesitated for a moment, then quickly forced a smile on his face. Ravenna, I was just joking. I'll listen to you, I'll rent an office space myself first. But let's make it clear, when your grandfather's office building becomes available, you need to bring it up with him right away. That building should be for our own family's company. Looking at his greedy and cunning face, I couldn't help but feel the urge to throw up the breakfast I just ate right in front of him. He resolutely submitted his resignation. The very next day after Ronan left the company, I used the excuse of investing in stocks to withdraw all the funds I had placed with Ronan. By then, he had already paid the deposit for renting the office space. Sure enough, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. He thought he could use my money to rent an office, originally just enough for a dozen or so people, but he insisted on leasing the entire floor. That floor could fit hundreds of workstations, and it was in the prime location of a top-tier office building. When he signed the contract and needed money, he found all his cards were empty and rushed to the company looking for me. But now he's no longer an employee of Blackwood Group and couldn't get in at all. I waited until after work before going out. He urgently stopped me and asked, Ravenna, why are all those cards empty? You should have told me before using them. I was utterly shocked by his shamelessness. That was my own money. Why should I need to inform him? Still, I patiently explained, a friend has an insider investment opportunity with double returns. I just put the money in temporarily to grow. It won't take long, and the balance in your cards will double too. Is that so? Ronan was overjoyed. He never doubted my words about investments, especially since it was backed by the Blackwood Group. Doubling that amount of money was no issue at all. What about the rent for the office? He asked tentatively, looking at me. Figure it out yourself first. My money should return with interest in about 2 months, and I'll give it all to you for your startup. Besides, won't your company be mine too in the future? He seemed to finally be getting the commitment he was waiting for and nodded happily. Just then, the phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and quietly declined the call, then gave me an apologetic look. Ravenna, the company is just getting started, and I still have a few employees to interview today. I can't spend time with you right now. Go ahead with your work. I've made plans to have dinner with a friend. I waved at him understandingly, pretending not to notice that it was already past working hours. Hearing this, he let out a slight sigh of relief. After waving back, he promptly got into the $1 million luxury car I had bought for him and sped away. I watched the high-end business car disappear into the distance, lost in thought. Even as a used car, its value holds up exceptionally well, at least enough to trade for 2 designer bags. I need to get it back as soon as possible. 2 months, then another 2 months. Ronan kept urging me to get married, pressing me to withdraw the investment money as soon as possible, but not a single cent had materialized. He kept pressing me to get married, so I said my mom didn't agree. Basically, I wanted to mess with him. I heard part of the money he used to start his company came from Valerie, and the rest was borrowed from a lending firm. The interest rates from the loan company were exorbitantly high, so he begged me to withdraw part of my investment funds to help him repay the debt. I casually replied, "It's all gone, not a penny left." "How is that possible?" "Even if there's a loss, you could still salvage part of the principal." "Are you lying to me?" Ronan's face was flushed with anger, suspicion evident in his eyes. I had no intention of humoring him any longer, not even bothering to feign politeness. "Who knows? But the loss has gone negative. Check the accounts yourself if you don't believe me." It was absurd. How could he verify anything when he didn't even know what I had invested in? With no other options left, he turned to selling his car. The money, though just a drop in the bucket for his current predicament, at least offered a momentary reprieve. His idea of selling the car perfectly aligned with my plan. The car was mine, but he had the right to use it. Selling the car would definitely require my presence, so the money from the sale went into my account. That same night, I boarded a flight abroad for a getaway with the $700,000 from selling the car in my pocket. It was over, time to close the net. After returning from my half-month trip, I had a big surprise prepared for Ronan. Wasn't Ronan always claiming that Valerie was his true love? In my past life, while building his own career, he never forgot to pave the way for her. I wonder if he would still love Valerie if he knew she wasn't my father's biological daughter and had no chance of entering our family forever in this life. I was still thinking about how to make this revelation more exciting for Ronan. Unexpectedly, Valerie handed me the opportunity on a silver platter. Since she was still squatting in my apartment and refusing to move out, I had my lawyer send her a formal notice first. But instead of responding properly, she took that legal letter and confronted me right after work. The company building has a spacious ground floor with shops and bustling pedestrian traffic. So this was her attempt to humiliate me in public. "It seems you didn't take my words seriously that day. How dare you send me this?" Valerie threw the lawyer's letter directly in my face, while Ronan, somehow, showed up right beside her. "You're saying you want to trade this for my house?" I glanced at Ronan standing beside her and chuckled. "Who are you calling an object?" Ronan snapped angrily. "Oh, sorry, then you're not a thing." I shrugged and casually apologized to him. Valerie stepped forward, blocking Ronan. "I know you like him, and this tantrum of yours is just jealousy. I can step aside and leave him to you, but on the condition that you transfer the apartment I live in to me, plus give me $5 million. Who do you think you are to make deals with me?" I couldn't be bothered to waste words on her and tried to move past her, but she stretched out her arm to stop me. "This is your last chance. Otherwise, I'll never let go of Ronan." I looked at Ronan. Wasn't he the least bit annoyed at being passed around like an object? Apparently not. He even seemed rather proud, probably thinking the two of us were fighting over him. "Ravenna, I want to tell you, Valerie is actually your sister. If you don't believe me, you can go home and ask your dad. There's no need to fight over me. Just give her the house and money, it's barely a drop in the bucket for you anyway. From now on, I'll be completely devoted to you. All these days, you've been humiliating me on purpose just to win me back, haven't you?" Ronan thought I was just throwing a tantrum out of jealousy. My understanding of his shamelessness reached new heights. "Oh? Didn't she tell you? Her mother was a hostess, and her father's name is unknown, but he definitely has zero connection to my family. Valerie even personally saw the paternity test results." Having said that, I stared intently at Ronan, not wanting to miss the dramatic display on his face. Sure enough, his expression shifted from shock to disbelief, then to suspicion, and finally to fury. He grabbed Valerie's arm and demanded, "Is what she said true?" Valerie struggled to break free from his grip, crying, "Ronan, you're hurting me. Let go." The two of them began to argue, which quickly escalated into a physical scuffle, one accusing the other of being scheming and money-obsessed, while the other scorned the former as selfish and inconsiderate. The crowd of onlookers grew larger, and I quietly slipped away. Of course, the drama was far from over. It wasn't long before both of them received court summons. Ronan was sued by Blackwood Group for embezzling company funds and leaking trade secrets during his employment. Valerie, on the other hand, was sued by me for unlawfully occupying my home. However, Valerie's situation was slightly better. She was still in her breastfeeding period, which left her with many loopholes to exploit. Ronan came rushing to me for help in a panic. He banged on my door so loudly that if it weren't for fear of disturbing the neighbors, I wouldn't have wanted to see his face again. When I opened the door, he immediately fell to his knees, his posture and expression almost identical to my father's. "Ravenna, please help me. I was deceived by that bitch Valerie. She manipulated me, said you were naive and easy to fool. She arranged for your kidnapping and made me play the hero. It was all her doing. I'm being sued by the Blackwood Group, and I'll go to jail. Ravenna, please beg your mother to intervene. She can save me. I truly loved you, but your father and Valerie twisted my mind. Your father couldn't stand being controlled by your mother, it was their plan, not mine. Ravenna." He was already kneeling on the ground, weeping uncontrollably, his shoulders heaving violently, his emotions evidently overwhelming. "It's already a criminal case now, and even my mother can't protect you. Besides, it was me who reported it to the company in the first place." "What?" Ronan suddenly knelt upright, looking at me with utter disbelief. Suddenly, he screamed madly, "Ravenna, did you already know about my relationship with Valerie? Was all this planned by you?" "Obviously. I've always made it clear, it's just that he was too confident. Why did you have to ruin me like this? Are you satisfied now that I've lost everything?" He glared at me fiercely, his eyes growing colder by the second. There was a murderous glint in his eyes that frightened me. I retreated quietly to the door and pressed the security button on the wall-mounted intercom. If he lashed out in desperation, it would be over. He sneered, "Ravenna, you're determined to destroy me, aren't you? I should have realized it earlier, when you fired my assistant and took my projects away. But since you won't let me live, don't expect to get off easy either." Ronan's eyes grew increasingly bloodshot, nearly bulging with rage. I thought to myself, this is bad. With a twisted grin, he stepped closer and closer until his unnerving face was almost pressed against mine. Then, clutching my chin with one hand, he pulled out a spray bottle with the other and tried to force it into my mouth. I kicked at his groin while covering my nose and mouth, then threw myself to the floor to block the door, buying time. After half a day of struggle, the security guards downstairs finally rushed to us and pinned Ronan, who was pressing a spray bottle against my mouth, to the ground. Later tests revealed that the spray contained a high concentration of pollen that could cause severe allergic reactions. This was attempted murder, and combined with his previous crimes of embezzling company funds and trading corporate secrets, it was enough to land him a decade or more in prison. As for Valerie, because she was in her lactation period and a single mother, although the court sentenced her to 2 years, the sentence was suspended for 2 years. I heard that my father went to confront her many times, demanding that she return all the money and gifts he had given them over those years. Because my father had been kicked out by my mother with almost nothing left to his name, and thanks to my mother's influence, no one dared to hire him again. Of course, he wasn't particularly competent either. His previous executive position at Blackwood Group was just a nominal one. At best, he might barely qualify as a security guard. I thought things would end here. However, a twist occurred that utterly shocked me. Valerie certainly didn't have the money to pay my father, and since Ronan's release from prison seemed indefinitely delayed, she directly married my dad, choosing to resolve these debt conflicts internally. So the twist in this story is that my former best friend schemed to become my younger sister, but failed. Instead, she ended up becoming my stepmother. Thankfully I was still in school, Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to untangle this messy relationship anytime soon. But none of this matters anymore. Since I couldn't ship Ronan and Valerie as a couple, I just raised high the banner of my dad and Valerie instead. I wish the scumbag and the bitch would stay together forever. That way, the ratio of quality men and women on the market would increase by a bit.